All right, folks, Jermaine Ferrell in the house with the WFXR Sports Sitdown. And I'm joined by, one of the guys that, I listened to a lot back in the 80s. He was the voice of the Virginia Cavaliers, and he's doing a lot of other good stuff right now. We'll get into that into a second. But join me right now, Mac McDonald, Big Mac. What is up, sir?
Don't make me feel old. Don't you dare start talking that story. That I remember when. And I appreciate it, Jermaine. Thanks. We're doing a lot of work with kids, which, as you said, we will get into. And I'm able to call on a lot of Virginia, things that happened in the story. And people say you need to write the book. And I'm now working with Ralph Sampson. We had known each other for about 40 years, and we're doing a podcast together, which is a lot of fun. In fact, this weekend, we just interviewed Isaiah Thomas. Ralph's contact list is a mile long, but it's been a lot of fun. It's been, really good to kind of, stay in touch. And so, and great to catch up with you. And I appreciate that. And really, I am honored when I hear young kids say, I listened to you win, and that's always going to be an honor because, I took it seriously. The whole radio thing and the whole representing university thing was something that, I cherished. I embraced it. And so anyway, it's good to talk to you.
Well, I appreciate you giving me the time. And first of all, just looking over, your time. I mean, where did your love for sports come from, and where did all that get started?
Well, I was a young kid. I mean, I think I was telling you on the phone. I was 5, 6 years old. I was interviewing my friends and my dad with a baseball bat in the garage. I was developing pre and post game shows, and I used to do play-by-play on my dad mowing the yard. And then I would go in the garage and interview him and the troubles he had with the tree and all this stuff. And he would laugh. And I don't know. There was just something about the business at a very early age. We only got one baseball game a week. We only got like one college football game a week. We got to listen to a lot of football on radio, which was, a lot of fun. I don't want to sound like, again, archaic, but still growing up in the 60s and 70s, there was just not a lot to choose from. And I became a diehard Raiders fan, an A's fan. But I'll tell you when things, my first job was following a great education in Northwest Missouri State, where I spent 3 years as voice of the Bearcats. And you can look up Northwest Missouri State. They're a football power in Missouri at Division II. And we learned to fall on our face and had a guy that just was really good with us as far as time and score. And he'd bring it just like a coach, just like Nick Saban. He would put an egg timer, the 3-minute egg timer, and he'd put it on the desk. And he would go, and he would be listening to our tapes or whatever. And he goes, I haven't heard the score in over 6 minutes, and he would just yell at us and where's the ball? What down is it? And we learned a lot about, the fundamentals of play-by-play, and then had a couple of guys. But anyway, I go to Shenandoah, Iowa, but then and toiled for 5 years and really had a lot of fun and doing a lot of high school games. My very first professional sports assignment by myself was a demolition derby. Now, if you know anything about demolition derbies, I didn't either. I had to go to the library because we didn't have the internet, of course, and I'm stranded. And 30 seconds into me covering and calling on radio a demolition derby, a car explodes and a guy catches on fire. So I had to fill 45 minutes. But anyway, that was I think the beginning of, in 1980, Gene Corrigan called me. We became really good friends, Todd Turner and that whole crew. And Ralph Sampson was a sophomore. And we were thrust into, and people don't believe me now, Ralph was bigger and better than Zion Williamson. And people say that Ralph could dribble like a guard. He was 7'4". He was an absolute icon. And a trivia question: he is the last 3-time college basketball player of the year. No, and I don't think that'll ever be done again because, kids are 1 and done and 2 and done. And I don't think that'll ever be done. But he was so big. And then going through the George Welsh era when he replaced Dick Bestwick and watching George Welsh build a team. And it was just terrific to be involved in the college atmosphere, to be involved in what all it took and meant, and how big it came, because I I was in the midst of a growing not only competition, but in a growing, watching television start to take over. How can we as a radio network, we would do things like match our radio play-by-play with a delay unit in our network studio so people could watch the game, because the radio transmission was different than TV. People used to say to me, Mac, how do you know a shot's going in? Because I would call it, and then on TV, it would go in. I would go, no, it doesn't work that way. But anyway, I tried to institute a lot of different things. I was proud to say I was one of the first radio networks that wanted to put a microphone courtside for the officials, because if we're sitting across the way, or in many cases, Durham or NC State, we were up in the rafters. So if there's a call and a controversy, we had no way of knowing. But I was allowed to put a wireless microphone courtside. So if the official, here's what we've got a double foul on 24 white on 14 red. And then we would know, I could turn that up. So we did a lot of innovations like that with our network and had a lot of fun. And so being at Virginia and going to Wake Forest and being with Tim Duncan and Rodney Rogers and Dave Odom and Ricky Stokes, who were there at the time, and then coming back. I mean, it was just a wonderful, wonderful career. And if I can tell you one quick story, I don't know how much time you have, but
we got time. We're good.
Okay. Ralph graduates. All right. We lose the Final Four. Ralph's going to graduate now. This guy wrote a book about stick. It was the spring of '83. And we're doing a remote to honor this guy and to sell this book. And I see a black car, and about 3 or 4 guys get out of the black car and head to our remote truck. And one of them was Muhammad Ali. And I was a big Ali fan. And Ali wanted to meet Ralph. We were at the North Wing of the Barracks Road Shopping Center.
That's crazy. So the champ wanted to meet Ralph.
He wanted to meet Ralph. He had a farm in Nelson County, which is south of Charlottesville. Right. So Muhammad Ali and his bodyguard, and Ali sits down right next to me. And we're sitting there. And so the morning guy, Dick Madre, he throws it to me and he goes, and Mac has a special guest. We were on the air live. And I said, all right, Dick, thank you very much. And there had to be adrenaline. And I said, sitting next to me is truly one of the greatest champions of all time. And I handed the mic, and Ali went into he grabbed my microphone. He goes, what do you mean one of? I am the greatest. And he went into the spiel. Long story short, his bodyguard, we got done with the interview, and he was talking about Ralph and how he wanted to meet Ralph. And his bodyguard said, what are you doing tomorrow night? And I said, I've got no plans. He goes, we would love to have you MC Muhammad Ali's appearance at Nelson County High School. I went, yeah, I could probably work that in. That won't be a problem, right? So we go down, packed auditorium. I'm at the podium, go, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you one of the greatest champions. No, the greatest champion of all time, Muhammad Ali. He walks out with 2 pair of boxing gloves on stage. Now, I had no idea what he was going to do. He handed me a pair, and of course, place is going crazy. And he handed me the pair of gloves before he spoke. And he goes, put them on. And I put on these red Everlast gloves, and I had boxed a little in college, but he wanted to do a shuffle. He didn't pipe. He pulled, he danced, and it was epic. It was epic. And it was one of the greatest moments of my life. Truly.
That is some awesome stuff. So when we look at, basically, you were at UVA in the early 80s. You were the voice of the Cavaliers, and you were part of some of probably the bigger moments in the history of Virginia athletics. I mean, you were there during the Ralph Sampson era. You were there when UVA went to, 2 Final Fours. You were there. And then for football with George Welsh, which, God rest his soul, an awesome, wonderful coach. I mean, he took UVA to levels that weren't ever seen. I mean, winning a Peach Bowl and doing all these other things, being competitive. During that era, what was it like to just be there? I mean, just to see, the football and basketball programs having that success, that hadn't been seen in a while.
Well, Jermaine, that's a great question, because at age 27, we were, as I said, we were thrust into the spotlight. Because of Ralph and the attention and everything that was going to happen, the Georgetown game, the Chaminade loss, the all that stuff that was going to unfold, it seemed like every other week or so, a Bill Russell, a Dick Enberg from NBC, a Brent Musburger, Curry Kirkpatrick from Sports Illustrated, Bill Raftery, all these people wanted to meet Ralph, be with Ralph, interview Ralph. And he didn't have time to get everything done, but we were, Doug Elgin would call me, and Doug's now the commissioner of the Missouri Valley Conference, and Doug and I work very closely together. And Doug would call me and go, he would say, Mac, how would you like to go to lunch with Bill Russell and Brent Musburger? Oh yeah, I could probably work that in too. And so that was truly amazing. Now, the importance of college football, Virginia was setting all these, basketball attendance records, and Ralph was putting them on the map. And the first Final Four was pretty interesting because I was kind of a lone wolf. Todd Turner did the games with me, but I served as my own engineer. I didn't hear the news Monday. We lose the semifinal to Carolina in 81 after beating them twice, and Al Wood goes off for 39. And I walk into the Spectrum in Philly, and people tell me that President Reagan has been shot. And we didn't know whether we were going to play or not. Turns out we did, and Indiana wins the national title. And so, but that you're in that moment, and you're trying to, when you look back on it, you go, oh, unbelievable. I mean, this is just like, but as I said, Ralph was so big. But then when Coach Welsh replaced Dick Bestwick, because football had to be important, and Gene Corrigan wanted it that way, but Gene left in 81 to go to Notre Dame. And the next athletic director, Dick Schultz, was a financial guy, an Olympic guy, who was with the Olympic Committee for a long time, AD at Iowa. And I mean, Dick, football had to be, and I think the quote was, football has to be the cornerstone. And I think that was Dick's first address to the university. It's got to be the cornerstone of any athletic department. And so, the improvements to Scott Stadium, George Welsh came in. Jermaine, one of the great stories of all time. There was a wide receiver named Nick Merrick. I still tell this at banquets. So George, in his first season now, he's Virginia, Navy comes to Charlottesville the first year in 83. But in 84, we returned the game to Annapolis. And so Nick Merrick, they're getting headshots because it's going to be an ABC game. So they're getting headshots and all the so Nick Merrick was a wide receiver. And so if you've ever been to Navy Marine Corps Stadium in Annapolis, all the Battle of the Bulge, Iwo Jima, Guadalcanal, all the major battles in our history are listed around the ring of Navy Marine Corps Stadium. And Nick Merrick tells one of the ABC guys, no wonder George came to Charlottesville. Who in the hell would want to play this schedule? And it is, to this day, one of the great lines ever uttered by a player. And I've always remembered it. But those are the things you remember. And it's the relationships with, I became good friends with Wayne Schutz, John Crotty. They're now on the Orange Bowl committee. These are people that you keep in your circle. Ray Daly, who had 2 interceptions in the Peach Bowl. I have a copy of the Peach Bowl broadcast, and I sent part of it to Ray. They had a rebroadcast in Charlottesville over the summer, and I sent it to Ray Daly. And these were people that, they didn't go pro. They didn't make it big. Donnie Mikowski did, who quarterbacked that team, but Howard Petty and Barry Ward. Ward was in the league for a while. But these were just guys that you got to know, and you still follow on Facebook to this day. So that's what you cherish. You cherish the relationships. I have a picture behind me in my office of Matt Schaub in my house showing me how to read cover 2. And he would come over and have dinner and then sit and help me as an announcer. Tim Duncan would come to my house and eat macaroni and cheese. Like, he'd clean out a whole thing of macaroni and cheese. It was his favorite. But those are the relationships and things that you remember that you keep close. There are games, there are memories, there are certain things that happen during broadcast, but the people you worked with and, the Frank Quayles of the world, and just the people that you help, that you build the network with, and how important it was. Those are moments that you'll always remember, for sure.
Now, here's something that's interesting that you brought up. I mean, and in fact, we're coming up on it. It's been 30 years since the assassination attempt on President Reagan. And back then, if you look at it, with the NCAA tournament, people don't remember this. If I'm not mistaken, you guys, well, when you were at UVA calling games, I think that was the last third place game they ever did. Because back then,
Correct.
they did a third place game
Correct.
where
Correct.
a team, if you lost in the semifinals, you played a third place game on Monday right for the championship game. And so take me back to that time again. I mean, you elaborated, but talk about a little bit more, because obviously that was a situation with all that happened. Talk about, a little bit about, the decision whether to play, whether not to play, and all those things, because that had to, like you mentioned, had to be a crazy time.
Well, yeah, because as I said, 40 years ago, it goes by so fast. And I was watching a Reagan documentary the other day, and I should have been listening to the news, but I wasn't. I was listening to music on the way to the Spectrum, and I got my case of radio stuff. And we, as I said, that was my first Final Four. Bobby Knight had put a fan in a trash can. That was a famous trash can incident in some bar. And I just, to be courtside for a Final Four was, my first year. It's like, oh, maybe it's going to be like this every year. And so to be able to be but walking into the Spectrum, there was this murmur, and there was this, and somebody came over to me, one of the security people or whatever, and they said, you can't go into the arena right yet. We're not sure. And the NCAA was always really tight about water bottles and, different things. And they go, you can't go into the arena right yet. It wasn't locked down, but they said, we're not sure if we're going to play. And I said, why? And they go, well, President Reagan has been shot, an assassination attempt on his life. So I remember just talking to the security people and waiting. And then finally they said the decision was made. They had been on the phone at that time. And yeah, that was the Monday of the championship game, but it was the last third place game. And you can look it up, Virginia hit 33 of 35 free throws to beat LSU for the third place game. True story. So yeah, but it was good. And then later, and I just talked to Isaiah Thomas this week, not to name drop. I don't mean to do that, but I told Isaiah, I said, you and I shared a Sports Illustrated cover. And he goes, well, I go, yeah, Final Four. I'm sitting on press row and you're shooting a layup. And if you look real close, you can see this little broadcaster over here. And that was me. And I still got the cover. I still got the SI. It was the only time I made the cover of SI. So.
That went up on me right there.
But it was great. And Isaiah was funny. Isaiah said, he goes, did you notice my face for that layup? He goes, I was scared to death I was going to miss it. He was really, really good. But so to be in that, and then the run in 84, where Virginia's not supposed to be in it, we lose to North Carolina State, and Jim Valvano gets his national championship, runs around the floor in 83. But 84, that was a team that had no business even being in the tournament. We were 17-11, had no chance, but got in the tournament, lost to Wake Forest in the opening round of the ACC tournament. The guys went on spring break. Terry Holland called them Sunday. He goes, guys, get back here. We're going to Jersey. And we beat Iona. Rick Carlisle, the Dallas Mavericks, hits a baseline jumper to beat Arkansas. And now we go, and we've got Syracuse and Carolina and us. And I'm trying to think who the Carolina beat. Oh, it was Indiana. That's right. It was Indiana in 84. Well, we knock off in the first game of that Thursday night Sweet 16. Othell Wilson takes apart a guy by the name of Pearl Washington of Syracuse. Pearl Washington was the stud. And we knock off Syracuse. And the next night, I'm courtside for Michael Jordan's last game in a Carolina uniform, because Indiana knocks off Carolina. And we probably wouldn't have beaten Carolina because they knew us too well, knew Ralph too well. Ralph was gone, but just knew the team so well. And then we end up beating Indiana. I'm going to tell you a funny radio story too. I'm working with a guy by the name of Tom Newell. This is a true story. You talk about innovation. Our broadcast position was right behind the Indiana bench. So I took an Electro Voice 635, which you're a TV, you know what those are. So a pretty big microphone. And I ran it down the curtain of our broadcast position. The NCAA had those, blue curtains, underneath the carpeting, underneath a floor mat, and underneath Bobby Knight's chair. True. And I hooked up the microphone to our bit. So when we would go to break, we would send it back to the station. They'd play the commercials there. We had just what they call nat sound. And every timeout, I would crank up that microphone, and we heard every Indiana timeout during the broadcast. And Tom Newell, who was the son of Pete Newell, a legendary basketball figure. So Tom Newell would come out of a break. We'd come out and I go, it's 47-43, Indiana by 4. Tom, what would Indiana want to do? He goes, you can look for Dan Dockich right now to cover Othell Wilson. They're going to go man, because he got everything right on the Indiana huddle.
Wow.
And we had it all. And if we had gotten caught, God knows what who knows what would have happened. I mean, Bobby Knight might have just killed us. But actually, Tom Newell was good friends with Bobby Knight. Not that was any, but I don't think I've ever heard of a radio network secretly, and it's a true story, secretly running a microphone under a chair of the head coach during a Final Four or during an NCAA tournament. I don't even know why we did it. We did it to hear. I was interested in what was going on. Coverage. I was all about coverage. I want to get the best coverage. I was always about that.
That is some funny stuff.
True story.
So, and I'm kind of, I might be ping ponging along. So,
I'm
sorry.
Talk forever.
Okay. So, when you look at it, obviously, you look at that era of UVA basketball, 2 Final Fours.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think that UVA probably should have won a national championship somewhere along the line with Ralph Sampson. And obviously, the '84 team was weird. But then let's circle back to now. Virginia, they are the defending national champions. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing is, Jimmy Miller, he does the color, with Dave Kane right now. From your perspective, and I talked to a lot of people that were so excited about UVA winning the national championship.
Sure.
Personally, how did you feel about it? I mean, seeing a place you work, they won a national championship.
Well, there was still a lot of people, and I still have a lot of good friends who were, are diehard fans. And now more from a, not being there, but I listen to Dave and Jimmy, and they do a wonderful job. And I've consulted Jimmy, because when he got thrown into the whole thing, he called me and he said, Mac, what you want out of a color man. What should I do as an analyst? When should I get in, get out? And one of the things I told Jimmy, I said, shut up during the big calls. Just literally, you'll have time to talk, but let Dave make the magical call if it's there, the game winner, whatever it might be. And that was my only advice to Jimmy. But anyway, so there were little things like that that was so much fun to be able to follow, and just, to be in that Final Four run and everything. I was in Augusta, Georgia during the women's national amateur at the Masters. The Masters was the following week. And I went to see the Augusta women's national amateur, and was in a bar slaughtered with Auburn fans. And Virginia was up 10, and I'm just kind of, you could have heard a pin drop. But then when they start the comeback and the comeback and the comeback, and then the foul and the whistle, and I got a little excited, and I said, there was a foul. And these Auburn fans like, no way, you can't hear it on TV in a noisy bar when Kyle Guy goes up in the corner. And so, but to answer your question, Jermaine, it was great. It was great with the program. I mean, as I said, there are a lot of people that still work there that, that I keep in touch with. And, I had Tony Bennett and I we knew each other just briefly when he first got to town. He was on I had built a talk show network, and he had done some shows, and we attended the same church, and, just got to know him a little bit. But just it was great to see. But more of the storylines and the way it happened, the Kihei Clark play, just the way it happened, the Kyle Guy play, to watch those guys gut it the way they did. I'm a storyline guy, always have been. What's the sidebar? What story are we telling here? Well, everybody told it from the UMBC, depths of that loss, the 16-1 loss, to the next year of winning the national title. And everybody wanted to jump on that storyline, and probably, they should have. But that's what was neat, and all the things that were in between. And that's the great thing about Tony Bennett. The boat trip, they were playing miniature golf tournaments and doing all this stuff to bond and to be close and whatever. And I mean, look what happens. That was a very talented. I mean, it was a talented team. They could make shots.
Good stuff. Now, getting back to that era, that 80 to 85, and when you look at, you were around two strong coaches, Terry Holland and George Welsh. Talk about each of them, do you have any unique stories you could share about Terry Holland? I know you got millions of them, but anything that stood out with Terry Holland and George Welsh?
Well, the first one about Terry is Terry was very superstitious, and I had, received for Christmas, and your era will laugh at this. I received the Atari game board.
Oh yeah.
With Space Invaders. Okay. I'm really dating myself. All right. The cartridges, the whole 9 yards, had Space Invaders, had whatever. So I took it on a road trip. Terry was all about family, and it was all about, keeping the radio guys close. And Terry we did a lot of things together. He's very superstitious, wanted to run on game day. There were just certain things. And I had to be there, had to wear certain clothes, and had to have a certain tie picked up. I mean, he was very, from the cleaners. I mean, he was very superstitious. Well, I used to take this Atari game and hook it up to the hotel TV in their suite, and we would play Atari for dollars. So you'd have a team of 3, everybody puts in $1, you can win 6. I mean, it was ridiculous. Well, Terry was so superstitious. There were 2 things I remember. I had the anchor leg of winning a $10 pot maybe, and Terry gets on his knees to coach me like he was in a game. Gets on his knees to coach me. You got this? To get to 1,000 first, take that lower. I mean, he's got the game figured out now. Now he's coaching me how to play Space Invaders. Well, that next morning, we were getting ready to play George Washington. I remember we were at a hotel somewhere in Northern Virginia, close, and somebody pulls a fire alarm. And so we all had to leave, whatever. So I packed up this Virginia bag that Coach Holland gave me I put the Atari in it. All my radio gear, my clothes, everything else was left in the hotel. It could have been just, ashes. But by God, I had to have that Atari game, because if Terry didn't play the night before game, I mean, his world was over. And then it got crazy because the coaches had a key to my room. They were stealing the Atari to take to their room to practice. That's how competitive it got. Now, how goofy is that, right? So a lot of that went on, and the 81 run where we're in New York and we had just beat Carolina by 17, come from behind, and we're in New York, and an alum takes us to a play, and we're watching Carnival. I remember it like it was yesterday. Ralph's on the aisle, and I'm right next to Ralph, and this Natalie attired lady comes down the aisle, pleated dress, blazer. And she goes, Mr. Sampson, you don't know me, but I certainly know you. And, I want to congratulate your basketball team. Really think the world of you. If you please sign my program, I'd appreciate it. You may know my husband. I'm Mrs. George Steinbrenner. And Steinbrenner's wife comes down the aisle to get an autograph from Ralph. And I thought, now that's big time. That's really big. Anyway, George Welsh comes in. Welsh was kind of hard to get to know. But once you got to know him naturally, and he had a certain way to do things, but he was strictly football. I mean, here's a guy that his wife used to say all the time. He would come down to breakfast, and before he would eat breakfast, he would literally he had 22 magnets on his refrigerator. He was drawing football plays on his refrigerator with like kids magnets and, whatever. And he was so all about football. He was so driven, to coach, and, but the people who coached under him loved him. The Tony Whittleseys and the Art Marcos and Bob Petchels and Tom Shermans and all these people. And then when you hear the guys tell stories, the Donnie Mikowski, and the player that he made, Donnie Mikowski, and you can look this up. It was 1984, the Magical Run, beat West Virginia 31-0 on the road. That team did. And we go to Blacksburg, middle of the year. They weren't playing at the end of the year, so it was the middle of the year. And George said there had to come a time when UVA had to establish itself as could compete with Virginia Tech, even in the early 80s. So it was 4th and 1 at like the 41-yard line of Tech, something like that. 4th and 1 normally. And conservative George Welsh calls a bomb to John Ford from Mikowski. I've still got the audio call because I listened to it one time. It's still good. And Mikowski throws a bomb. And there was a picture. There was a photograph. And I used to have it. I don't know where it is. Somebody probably stole it off my wall. But a guy, the catch was John Ford. His fingertips were like this on the football at the 1-yard line right before he goes down. It's the greatest, I think, football photograph I've ever seen. And Ford was like this. And then, the pass was good. We go in, score, win, beat Virginia Tech on that 4th and 1 call. That was Coach Welsh. I mean, that was, they shut Purdue out in the second half in the Peach Bowl. Jim Everett, so it was just remarkable to be around him, his staff, and then the players and there is something about sports, and Jermaine, this, there is something about sports, about chemistry, about being a team. And if anything, George Welsh knew how to coach a team, how to build a team.
It's so true. Now, something I spoke with Jeff Charles about this, the coaches shows. He hosted that. You hosted the shows at UVA. Talk about that era of coaches shows, because back then, in the Roanoke area, they would air back to back. You'd get the Virginia Tech coaches show and the Virginia coaches show. And you talk about two different styles of shows, but talk about it from your perspective, because I heard Jeff Charles told me so many stories about how they would have to you'd have to drive the tape to all these states.
Oh, yeah.
And all that.
We hired shuttle people.
From your perspective, what was it like doing those shows? Because I'm sure that, let's say, and I remember Virginia played a lot of night games back then in the 80s.
TV started doing night games. Yeah.
Talk about that.
We had couriers. So people would get up at 6 a.m. on a Sunday and pick up a tape. And then and sometimes we'd work all night anyway, but they would have to courier the tape to Norfolk and because that's what the department wanted. That's what Todd Turner wanted, who was who was assistant athletic director in charge of marketing promotions. That was what was going on with other programs, and you couldn't be left behind. You had to do a coach's show. Welsh didn't like that coach's show. But Welsh liked, after a game, win or lose, he liked a little of the Kettle One. He would get into all that Grey Goose every once in a while, okay? And he would come in, and of course, winning was a lot better, but he would come in 2:30, and sometimes we'd record at 3 a.m. to get the show done and to get it on the road, and it was but it was a lot of fun. But George was professional. I mean, we got through it but that very first year, the fall of 80, Dick Bastor doesn't want to do the show. And Todd Turner says, Mac, you and I are going to do the show. We're going to redo highlights. It'll be called 29 Sports Review. We got involved with Channel 29. And we're going to show some. Bob Wells was a sports director. We're going to show, we're going to show highlights or whatever. Well, Bob was a colorful individual who covered the team. Bob was very opinionated, good guy. We laughed a lot. Well, one of the very first shows we ever did, Bob wore a white sport coat and Todd and I were off to the side, kind of on the desk. And so we opened on a 3-shot, and then Bob started to do sports. Well, Bob loved to put chaw. Okay. He loved the tobacco. And so as he's doing, he forgot to take it out. He's now doing sports with this tobacco in his mouth, and he is spraying the entire set with tobacco juice. And his sleeve, because he had his arm like this, he's doing the sleeve of this sport coat is now trashed with tobacco juice. Really, it looks like somebody took a paintbrush with brown paint and went like that. Okay. It is covered. Now, Todd and I are dying. So we hear in our IFB, the director goes, would somebody go get an ashtray for Bob Wells so he could get that out of his mouth? So this stage manager, whatever, the director gets on his hands and knees, or the floor guy, the floor director gets on his hands and knees and crawls around, and he's got an ashtray in his hand. And so you see Bob doing sports. Like if I was doing sports, you see this hand come up and you see this ashtray being put like, hey, Bob, spit it out, will you please? Greatest moment in TV. And that was my introduction to Sunday night, big time college athletics, sports television. That was my introduction. But we did our best. We tried to be innovative and, and launched a couple of careers, coming out of the TV show. So, but yeah, it was fun. It was a good time.
And you mentioned earlier about just Virginia wanting to beat Virginia Tech and having that moment, and then even basketball. From your perspective, talk about the relationships that, if they had them, I mean, the relationship that George Welsh, if he had one, with Bill Dooley, and then also one thing I thought was neat, maybe the relationship that Terry Holland had with Charlie Moyer here.
Right. Well, pretty interesting that time, because Virginia Tech always felt like kind of a stepchild because of the ACC. And when all that got put together, George Allen, engineered that. There was a lot of pressure on the ACC. Look, you got to get Virginia Tech in the league. There's no reason that Virginia Tech should be left out, and yada, yada, yada. And Virginia was trying to stop it. And there was a lot of stuff going on. But I think at the time of Bill Dooley and George Welsh, and I think the old school guys, there's always a rivalry, always competitive. You always want to win. But I think it's a lot different now, until even this year, Jermaine. But getting back to what you said about, I think there was so much respect at that time. Dooley, Welsh, Terry Holland, Charlie Moore was one of the greats. And there was certainly a rivalry. But then again, the football was home and home, but basketball it was always at a neutral site. I think we were playing twice a year for a while. Roanoke, Richmond. We were never going to go home and home. In fact, I'm not even sure we got to home and home until the ACC, if I remember right. Now I could be wrong, but
you're right on that. Yeah. Because
and,
the even numbered years they played in Roanoke, the odd numbered years they played in Richmond.
Oh, okay. But I think there were a couple of years now. I'd have to go back and look at that. I think we played 2 a year.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, they did. But I think
so. It was kind of like a home and home,
basically, if you played in Roanoke, it was more of a Tech area.
Yeah.
Richmond was closer to Charlottesville.
But it was, my head was spinning so much anyway. It just, and then we had, a couple of unbelievable road trips there. The '98 game, the comeback. I mean, there are a lot of things that I remember. As a matter of fact, and in the early '80s, I was trying to do every game. In other words, I didn't want the school or to put the pressure on somebody who wasn't very good. Not that I was good, but I don't mean that, but I mean to back me up. In other words, if I had an away football game at Navy, I arranged for a private plane and a police escort to get back in time to do the basketball game. And I did that, I think, 4 times in my career. Never missed one of those double headers. I had a game in Blacksburg, caught a plane, Charlottesville, police escort, U-Haul, 6:45, and I was on the air at 7:00. And I did that 3 or 4 times. To me, that was exciting, but that was to show people that, with a little effort, I can do this. Anyway, I have this friend who just battled throat cancer, and he's doing well. His name was Jimmy Casella. He had a restaurant, and when I came back in 96, I said, Jimmy, I want you to be my spotter. And he said, what's a spotter do? And I said, you help me with tackles. Maybe there's a substitution or something I should know about. I want you to help me with it. Okay. And it was, and actually, I think this was in the 80s until he did it full time in 96. But I took him down to it was with Thanksgiving night, cold, and we're playing Virginia Tech, and opening kickoff, taken by whoever, Howard Petty 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and he's knocked down by, and I turned to Jimmy, and Jimmy just looked at me. He just made eye contact, and he looked at me, and he went, oh. I said, you may want to help me find the tackles a little better than I don't know. And our booth was steaming over, and that was his first introduction. And when I returned in 96, Jimmy became my spotter and never missed a game of the 12 years I did. And Jimmy was the best, But yeah, I mean, those are the things you remember. We had a run-in with Republicans versus Democrats. Are you ready for this? You talk about how tough the party lines are. George Allen was a former Virginia quarterback. George Allen helped get Virginia Tech into the league. Mm-hmm. George Allen's running for governor against Mark Warner, Republican Democrat. So in the fourth quarter, and this was a tradition, even before George, in 1981, George called me and had me come over and meet Coach Allen, his dad, at a breakfast. And he didn't know me from Adam, but I had just gotten there, and he had heard me on morning radio. Anyway, so we would have George on for the entire third quarter. He'd come after halftime and he'd put on a headset. He'd do the game with us. It was a tradition, home or away. Well, one year we have Allen on. I think it's during the gubernatorial race. And we get this scathing letter. The Virginia Sports Network gets a scathing letter from the Democrats. We want equal time, and we want Mark Warner to work the third quarter of Virginia's game against Carolina. What? George, this was not, we didn't even talk politics. We talked football. We didn't even talk. So sure enough, the next home game, I don't remember it's Carolina, but the next home game, here comes the Warner campaign. All the lackeys, the little phones and the Blackberries and all that. And here comes Warner, and he comes in, and he's coming in to do halftime. He didn't come in to do the whole third quarter. He comes in at halftime. And Jimmy was a big Republican. And Jimmy stood up and he goes, Mr. Warner, welcome. But I have everybody in this booth did not vote for you. I mean, so it was like, oh, okay. But we had, and so we had to build we had to say a bullet point, no more political candidates in our booth ever. I went, what? George Allen? How could we say no to George Allen? Anyway, that's what we ran up against.
Now then, what's neat, your time at Wake Forest. I mean, you had Tim Duncan and Wake Forest. They had a magical run, won a couple of ACC titles. But just talk about Tim Duncan, because I'm sure it almost gave you a flashback to when you had, when your time with Ralph Sampson.
The years at Wake, Jermaine, I did their games 90 to 96, and just that's a smaller family, Odom and Ricky Stokes, and they were Virginia guys, and returning with them. And I got to spend a couple of years with Bill Dooley, and then Jim Caldwell came in. The Wake years were so very, very special, and what Coach Odom was doing. And we went to the NCAA every year, could never really get over the hump. But as the story goes, and most of you probably know this, but Hurricane Hugo wiped out Tim Duncan's pool in the Virgin Islands, and Chris King, who had played for Dave's, was down there in a camp or doing whatever. And he said, hey, I got a kid you got to see. And Coach Odom went down to see Tim Duncan and almost offered him immediately. And then Duncan was supposed to redshirt until the Maktar Injai incident. He was illegally recruited, too many phone calls. It wasn't anything brutal, but one of Dave's assistants, Larry Davis, had made too many phone calls to Maktar. So they would not let Maktar sign with Wake. the NCAA, secondary violation or something. I mean, you're kidding me? So Duncan was thrust into learning college basketball as an 18-year-old, 195-pound guy who really could play, but had, just didn't know that. And we go to Alaska to play the Great Alaskan Shootout. I do Tim's very first college competitive basketball game in, in the United States. And Tim Duncan fouls out, scores bagel. No points, 5 fouls. And that was Tim Duncan's first game. So, but then of course he grew into be, truly one of the great, great players of all time. But there was, as much as the talk about Rodney Rogers, who got paralyzed later after his NBA career, flipping a motorcycle on his farm, with all the talk about Tim Duncan, people should not forget Randolph Childress.
Yeah.
And that was when we played 3 games, and Randolph Childress goes for 108 points in 3 days and literally carried Wake Forest to the 95 title. And in one of the most remarkable things I had ever seen, performances I'd ever seen, the Friday opening round game against Duke, Wake was down 31-13, might have been 18 points with about 8 minutes on the clock in the first half, getting drilled. Timeout. Randolph Childress circles all his players, tells Dave Odom, get me the ball. And he goes on a tear. He knocks down like 6 threes. And Virginia goes in the Wake goes into the locker room leading 41-37. Whatever that run proves, whatever that run is, 28-6 or whatever. It was the most incredible 8 minutes of basketball I have ever seen, ever. And then and then Childress starts to feel it. And then he starts to get, right in front of Jeff Jones on the Virginia bench. And one of the guys on the Virginia bench said something like, miss it. And he knocked down a 20. I mean, he was shooting deep threes. That wasn't that cheap 19-footer. He was shooting deep threes. And he would turn around and look at the bench, go, how was that? He was and then of course the famous Carolina final with the crossover dribble against Dante Calabria, where he crosses over and he falls down on this crossover move, and Childress looks at him while he's dribbling. Get up. The play is still going. Get up. Takes and knocks down a 3 and then looks at him like, where are you? Yeah, he was ridiculous. Then scored all, I think, 7 points in overtime, whatever it was. And Wake goes on to win 95. It's incredible. Incredible.
That was incredible and crazy.
Oh, yeah, it was a lot of fun for sure.
Now, I want to circle back and I want to circle back some real quick, not to leave out anything about UVA, but obviously we got to mention it. And I think I talked to you about it.
What?
The Chaminade game. I remember I was telling you, and I listened to it on the Walkman. You called the game back in that time frame.
How much time you got? I could talk Chaminade till I'm blue in the face.
But yeah, but what was neat, and you could share it as part of it, is that game happened, so late. I mean, back nowadays with ESPN and everybody else, that game would have been on the air somewhere. But back then, didn't have that. So just take me back to that moment, because it still goes down as one of the biggest upsets until obviously I think UMBC said, hey, Chaminade, hold my beer. Now I know the UVA fans probably get mad at me, but that was big back then.
Well, what people don't realize is the win against Georgetown, Ralph got sick. We go to Tokyo to play 2 games in this little Suntory exhibition, and Ralph can't play Houston and Phi Slamma Jamma. And Othell and Ricky rip Phi Slamma Jamma in Tokyo. No excitement. The Japanese, Asian fans just didn't know what basketball was. Anyway, Clyde Drexler called Othell and Ricky the 2 Smurfs. He goes, the 2 Smurfs out there running. I mean, in the press, in his press post-game press. Anyway, so we beat Utah, and now we go to the island, and a couple of days rest, shoot-arounds. Terry just wanted this little game on the way back. UVA was number 1. And it had been quite the stretch, and Ralph still wasn't 100%, but he could play. He was okay. And sure enough, 8 o'clock at night, 1 a.m. Eastern time was the opening tip. And so the game ended at 3. We all know how the game, and there has been an entire book dedicated to that game. It's called The Greatest Upset Never Seen, I think is the name of it. You can get it on Amazon. But afterwards, it was like, did this really, did it happen? Did it resonate? Well, now we get back to the hotel. It's about, I don't know, 4:30. And again, nobody really knows it. So we at the radio station, WINA in Charlottesville, we had a connection with CBS Radio. And there used to be a guy, he retired. His name was Jim Kelly. And Jim Kelly did a lot of sports, a lot of radio, Jim Kelly was an icon. I loved Jim Kelly until this phone call. So it's 4:30 in the morning, the 24th. Now it's Christmas Eve morning. And I called the CBS hotline and I get Mr. Kelly on the phone. And I said, Mr. Kelly, I'm Mac McDonald, I'm the voice of the Cavs. I've got a story for you. I've got a coach interview because I had it on cassette, and we had these alligator clips. We unscrewed the telephone and we could put alligator clips on the phone receiver. That's how we could send audio. But anyway, I told Mr. Kelly, I said, I have got a story for you. Number 1, Virginia was beaten tonight by Chaminade, a little island school. It's a huge upset. I do have coach's reaction. If you would like that this morning, and Jim Kelly tells me, and again, I'll never forget this, and I lost all respect. Kelly says, I'm all taped up through the morning. I don't need it. Are you kidding me? It's 4:30 in the morning. Okay, maybe your 5:30 is done. You've got several sports. You don't want to go in a studio and record 3 more minutes, and I'm giving you the biggest story. You'll be the first to have it because nobody else will. Newspapers are already out. ESPN, it was already out. And hardly anybody knew it. But anyway, and I lost all respect for Jim Kelly. I said, you got to be a better, I didn't say it to him, but I said to myself, you got to be a better guy than that. You got to be a better radio guy than that. You got to be a better broadcaster than that. I could have given you a story. Hawaii just sunk into the Pacific. Are you kidding me? So anyway, but that started the whole, and then we fly back and land and people, and it was just then showing up cause we landed Christmas Day in Chicago. It just shows you how the news cycle changed because we're changing plan. I mean, we're flying and Christmas Day, it finally shows up in the Chicago Tribune sports section, tiny Chaminade upsets Virginia, blah, blah, blah. I was just now getting to the mainland on the 2 days later. That certainly wouldn't happen to this day for sure.
Crazy times.
Yeah. Unbelievable time for sure.
Now just going over a couple things in your career, everybody know that you were a Virginia Sportscaster of the Year a couple of times. You were also North Carolina Sportscaster of the Year. So kudos to that. But let's talk about right now, because you're a golf lover, obviously, what's behind you.
Thank you.
You're doing something that I appreciate what veteran sportscasters do. And that is help the next group of sportscasters. Because let's face facts, there's a lot of people growing up. I grew up, I remember stacking 3 TVs in my room and try to do the news.
Yeah.
It's another story for another. I would take the Roanoke Times and I would even pretend to be Doug Dowdy, which you know him very well. And we all do. He's a legend. But yes. I'm sure you got some Doug Dowdy stories. But anyway, We'll say that for another time. But now you are shaping broadcasters with the Dan Patrick School of Broadcasting down in Florida. Talk about how you got involved in that, and just talk about what are some of the keys, or what are some things you show these youngins, what it takes to be a sportscaster, whether it's play-by-play or just.
Yeah, it was fortunate. I was down there working in the golf industry and a couple of golf academy owners. I came down to kind of semi-retire, and I was a director of admissions and a couple of golf guys. I helped launch 92.9 The Game in Atlanta. I was working with a guy who's now in Chicago, just doing great. His name is Jason Goff, and Jason's with NBC Chicago, and we had a great time. And doing nighttime talk in Atlanta. And, but anyway, I had a chance to come to Orlando. I had this dream. I always wanted to be in Florida where I could play, every day, which hasn't happened. But I mean, it was to work with kids and as a director of admissions. I certainly wasn't a teacher. I'm not good enough to teach. But I mean, and what happened was they got stupid and they went financially, both academies they went bankrupt. And we had a staff 35. I mean, it was, so anyway, I was trying to ended up teaching for a division of Full Sail online. And then one day somebody put the newsletter on my desk. Dan Patrick, sports guy, most people should know, NBC Tonight and his talk show, ESPN, of course, with Keith Olbermann. Dan Patrick to launch sportscasting school at Full Sail. And I immediately pulled the resume off the computer, marched over to Gus Ramsey, who worked with Dan. Gus is our boss. He's the program director. And I got to him and I said, wow. I said, if there's anything I've ever really wanted to do was to be able to give back. And I said, I'd be more than interested. And the school was just launching. Long story short, when I got hired, there were, I think, 6 kids in the curriculum. They're now over 600. And we have a staff of 16. I think I was the 4th instructor to be hired, and I was going to teach vocal. So it's kind of I teach kids how to sit in front of a camera and speak, basically how to storytell, how to breathe, how to use their voice. And just, it's a lot of fun and the ability to give back. And yeah, we do Rollins sports. So it's not a class, but it's an extracurricular, and we hold play-by-play sessions and special classes and go through all their stuff. And it's the biggest kick, because I see so many of these students come in and they think it's easy. And just like when I was going to college and when the guy kept turning over the egg timer, and I said at some point in my life, even at that time, I said, I'm going to give back to students if they want to be in this industry, because my dad supported it. My dad loved the fact that I was doing it. It was very, very good to me. I get a chance to meet great people like you and tell old rocking chair stories. So every time in class, when we get to a moment like this, I say, all right, rocking chair moment. That's what I call it. Here's another rocking chair moment. And then I may tell them about Ralph versus Buck Williams, or I may tell them the Chaminade story, and they're just like, no, nobody did. Nobody ran a microphone down a table and recorded Bobby Knight. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. And so, and I didn't even tell you about the game ball story with UVA.
You teased it. You got to share it now.
All right, I will. But anyway, being able to give back. I don't know how many radio guys, and I'm sure or TV guys. I'm sure there are guys that have gotten game balls. I don't know, for doing something good, whatever. Virginia at Duke. Matt Schaub is the quarterback. So it's 03, 04. I get those years mixed up. 03, 04, 04, I think. And Alvin Pierman is our running back or whatever. And Virginia's got a pretty good team. They ended up in the Continental Tire Bowl. We're at Duke. Well, if people know about Duke, it's the press box is the medical center. Mm-hmm. So we had to wait till the whole till the doctors moved out of their office so we could get into our press box on Friday night. And with a noon game, we have to set up on Friday night. I hated the Duke trip. It was a pain. Hated it. And they had to build risers. Our windows wouldn't open because of their offices. They had tiny little windows. They weren't press box windows. So I just hated the Duke trip. The press box was small, whatever. All right. So our engineer is setting up. It's late. It's 10 o'clock at night. And we're just kind of going in office to office, booth to booth, whatever. And the office next to us was the Duke defensive coaches. And on the wall were all the Duke defensive calls, still on the guy's office wall. And I went, oh, well, how stupid is this? And I just happened to unthumbtack the Duke defensive calls, and I put it in my briefcase. So game day, 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, Ron Prince, who's at K-State and with the Detroit Lions, whatever. Ron Prince comes upstairs to check the phones. And Ron was the offensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. And I said, Ron, come here. And we go in the hallway and nobody's around. And I pulled it out of my pocket. I said, does this do anything for you? He looked at it. They were the Duke defensive signals. He goes, where'd you get this? I said, don't ask. Does this help you? And he goes, yeah. So fast forward, there was a call on the Duke defensive sheet called the choke blitz. But they didn't know how Duke signaled it in. You know, Ron didn't know. He knew where the blitz was coming from, but he didn't know the official signal. Well, now he has the signal. Late in the game, Virginia's up 3. They decide to go for it on 4th down. They're going to pass for it. Prince looks across the Duke sideline, and here's one of the Duke coaches. So he knows the choke blitz is coming. He changes the play to Schaub to go to swing Pierman out of the backfield on the other side. They beat the blitz. They score the touchdown. Virginia wins. And on Monday, I walk into the coach's office, Al Groh's office. Ron Prince is there. We always did Al's talk show Monday night. And Ron Prince goes, I'd like to present you, Mac McDonald, voice of the Cavaliers. I'd like to present you with the game ball from the Duke game. I said, why? I mean, I knew why. And he goes, you know why? He goes, choke blitz. It'll always be a favorite, you know. So when we talk, or if we trade texts at Christmas. Hey, coach, have a choke blitz Christmas. It always became a running joke. And yes, I still have the Virginia game ball. So was that competitive? Should I have not done that? Represent Virginia. You leave the signals on the wall. Come on. Everybody would have done that. Anybody would have done that. So now the ACC is probably what are they going to do? Put me in jail because I stole Duke defensive signals? I was all about our guys. I was all about the coaches. I felt the competitive advantage. I don't want Virginia to lose if I had heard something, you know. So it happened.
What's the couple other quick questions? What is the biggest piece of advice you give these youngins out there to when they get started, or if they want to have a successful career in the industry of broadcasting?
Great story. I mean, great question. Great. I have 2 words. We have 2 words for them. Be yourself. You know, don't try to be somebody you're not. Don't try to be Dick Vitale. Don't try to be Stephen A. You're not ready for that. Don't try to be Christopher Russo, Mad Dog. You're not ready for that yet. Maybe if you have some swagger, some research under your belt, and you can recite, you know, the box score from the 1954 World Series. If you can do that, okay. But right now, you've just got to be yourself, and you've got to learn to be a storyteller. I mean, how many stories have I told in the last hour? 1,000 of them, right? You've got to be able to communicate and then use proper fundamentals. And I call it the toolbox. And I tell them in Vocal One, and they've had 4 classes prior to me. But I'm the first one that says, okay, I'm going to build your toolbox. So as I'm telling them how to breathe, speak, use their core, I'm telling them at the same time, you have to have a circle, you have to know how to research, and you have to be able to tell the story and get it right. So I tell them there are 1,000 things that are going in your toolbox. And it's like teaching a golf swing. I don't want to teach you 100 things because that's going to scramble you. I'm going to try to give you 3 or 4 fundamentals, and then we'll get you out of Vocal One. You can go to Vocal Two, and you can move on to build your brand. But bottom line, it's 2 words, Jermaine: be yourself.
Good stuff.
And to understand what it takes. A lot of them don't know. Here's the other thing: practice. They have, and I'm sure you did just as you talked about. Turn down the sound. You were doing games. You were rehearsing. I'm doing play-by-play on my dad mowing the yard. I tell them, you've got to practice your craft. You've got to work at it. You've got to be good at it. And the only way you're going to do that is by practicing.
That's what's fun with that. All right. So not that we haven't had fun. We've had a lot of fun here. We're going to throw some more. I'm going to throw some more good stuff at you. It's called Ferrell's 5. These are 5 questions. And now, even though they're rapid fire, but heck, you know what?
I'll give you quick answers. This is good.
But here's the thing. I tell this to everybody, I preface this. It might sound like rapid fire, but you know what? you can take as much time you need,
No.
and we'll get it right.
No, you're going to, this is my psych test. And then I want you to give this video to a psych guy who's going to say, that old guy is off his rocker. That old guy should be in a home somewhere. So, okay.
All right. My first question is your favorite color and why?
Navy blue, because I look damn good in it.
I think we all do, don't we?
Maybe. Yeah. Navy blue.
Good stuff. All right. Second question. Before you do a broadcast, do you have a pregame meal or do you have a pregame ritual you do before every broadcast? I know you talk about how Coach Terry Holland was superstitious, but do you have a pregame ritual that you do as far as what food you eat, what beverages you drink, anything like that?
There was always a ritual: exercise, run, and then eat very, very light. Because I've seen guys, because you can't go courtside or you can't go into a game and hiccup and slobber all over yourself and burp through half the game. And then it's water hours before, no Coke, no Pepsi. No bubble, no coffee, maybe, but I because I liked, if I ate a big meal, I was lethargic. It's like Thanksgiving, you finish back. So I just tried to it was afterwards that we had an occasion to have an iced tea or two.
Good deal. Well, speaking of food, you're having a dinner party. This is Mac McDonald, the Big Mac Attack, having a dinner party. You can invite 5 sports figures, past or present, alive or dead.
Wow.
Who would you invite to this dinner party and why? It could be
Where did you get that? What a great question. Where did you get that?
Hey.
So who are the 5 people I would invite?
And
they could bring their girlfriends and okay.
Yeah, it'd be a plus. I mean, if you want to throw a plus one or whoever they can bring, but 5 people, 5 in the world.
And they all got to be sports related.
It could be sports related or it could be outside.
Entertainment.
I'll leave it to you.
Okay. Well, first of all, I would definitely want Jackie Robinson there. My dad used to talk about Jack all the time, and I would definitely want him there to just sit and listen to his stories, because I think, it would be just absolutely, blown away. Sitting to my right, because he was left-handed, I would want Kenny Stabler. I was a diehard Raiders guy and a big Stabler guy. I mean, he was just the man. And then we could sit and drink together, and have a really good time. Now it gets really tough. I think, well, at the other end of the table, so this would be actually number 5, and he's not there. I would want my dad to be there.
Okay, he can be there
because he died in 91, and nobody was a bigger fan of what we were doing and every story I told. And when the day he had lunch with Ralph Sampson and met Ralph, I mean, it was like, the greatest thing in the world. And so that would have been pretty special. But now I got 2 left. So sitting to my left would have to be Clint Eastwood. And because for years, Clint Eastwood, the man. I mean, just literally the man. But now
he played a baseball scout, so it does have a sports tie.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, exactly right. You can talk about now. The 5th becomes, and I really have to think about this, because I mean, Muhammad Ali was certainly big. I was a big Oakland A's guy, and I think I know who I'd pick, because it would be Reggie Jackson, and I think because when I was in Des Moines, the Iowa Oaks were the farm club for the Oakland A's, and all those guys, Vida Blue, Sal Bando, Gene Tennis, Joe Rudy, they all came through Des Moines. And I became so I think that's why I became a Raiders fan too, but I became a huge Oakland A's fan. I have a business card called Mac McDonald Media. It's just got a little logo. The logo is green and gold.
Right.
And nobody was bigger to me than Reggie. And just the way the swagger. And the first softball team we had in Shenandoah, Iowa, worked for KMA Radio. And it was a pretty competitive area for softball, uniforms, the whole 9 yards. We got green and gold, and we were called the KMAs. And yes, I got number 9 because that was Reggie's number when he was with the A's. So, stupid. So, I got Jackie Robinson. I got Eastwood. that's going to be a pretty good table. My dad's got a Stabler. I mean, that's going to be pretty good. And I'm going to just top this with a little vanilla swirl topping and a cherry on top.
There you go.
People have said, Mac, what is your fantasy foursome? And, who would you play golf with or spend the day with? I said, that is easy.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be Eastwood, Michael Douglas, and Joe Pesci. And that to me would be the best foursome ever. And oh, by the way, Sharon Stone's going to be the beer girl. So that's my final foursome right there. And and one other person too is I'm a big Kevin Costner guy. Big Kevin Costner guy. Of all, and Bull Durham favorite.
Full love of the game.
Yeah. Well, not only that, and then Bull Durham, of course, and I just really liked Costner.
Dreams. I mean, he's done a lot of sports movies.
Oh yeah, huge.
So got Mac McDonald here, and throw this out there. You threw that in there, but I want to make sure I have this too. You're the president of the Mac McDonald Media. You deal with marketing, sales, talenting, consulting, doing a great job with that. All right. So my fourth question is going to be, and by you being an ACC aficionado, covering Virginia on 2 stints as well as Wake Forest, give me your favorite play other than Scott Stadium and also U-Haul and now obviously JPJ. Your favorite ACC place to do a game on the road for football and basketball, and your least favorite, which I think you've kind of given already.
This is
your least favorite for football and basketball.
Yeah, this is easy. Hated Carolina. I hated the Dean Dome because they were too pristine to put us on the floor. So we had to sit up in a booth. Duke was up on the rafters. Hated Cameron Indoor. Hated it. If I could sit courtside, maybe. But I mean, it was disliked it. All right, football, Clemson. Not only, 80,000, yada, yada, yada. But Tim Beret, one of the greatest sports information directors ever, knew how to do his job. Bill Belichick, do your job. Nobody did it better than Tim Beret. And the pregame meal, I overindulged because it was barbecue and fried catfish and cornbread, and it was all my favorites. So it was, ridiculous. So that favorite football, worst. Oh, let's see. I favorite basketball then. I'm trying to think of the favorite. Not so much JPJ.
So I want to clarify. So your least favorite basketball facilities was the Dean Dome.
Carolina and Duke, for sure.
And then your favorite, and then your least favorite. Yeah, your favorite for basketball in the ACC.
Yeah, favorite for basketball, ACC. Yeah, I hated Carolina. I hated all the 4. I mean, Maryland was good with the new building. It was kind of good, and I mean, just because the fans were pretty funny. They did all the newspaper stuff, and they introduced the other team, and they were, they were 4-letter. Even my introduction into Duke. Not to get off on a whole tangent here, but we got off out of a cab. We didn't even get off the team bus, and I had a silver case, no markings on it, no UVA, no V Sabres, nothing. This was like an 82 or so. To go to Cameron Indoor. These fans, the minute I got off the bus, out of the cab, started chanting. They're waiting to go in line, the Coach K, whatever. Bad radio. I'm going, what? How did they know? Now the place. Favorite basketball though. I'm trying to think. Because JPJ was.
But you can say, if you want to go with JPJ, that's fine.
I hate to homer it, but I'm trying to think. Best visiting basketball. Florida State sucked. Florida State's football sucked. They put us in this huge booth. Nobody could open. There were no window. You couldn't open a window. And then when they decided to put some architect, and then when they decided to put in a window, they put one in this big. Like 3 by 3, 2 by 3. Come on, build a press box. Chuck Walsh, who was the SID I always used to give him. Miami's no trip to the beach. Basketball, I'm going to have to say JPJ by process of elimination.
And then football, your favorite and least favorite.
Oh,
think you told me Duke. You told me Duke wasn't really one on your
yeah,
high.
no, hated Duke football. Hated Duke football, but Clemson was definitely the best. Clemson football, hands down. Just from the presentation, start to finish, the hospitality, everything. Yeah, it was just a good place to go.
Just to throw it out there, Scott Stadium, they got a good hit. They got a good spread.
Yeah, they actually came to me. I actually kind of helped. Well, I ripped it off Carolina too. Carolina did a great job at their press box and treated their radio network really, really well, where you could bring in guests and sponsors and whatever. And that's what I wanted to do. But then they cut my booth in half to do that. But I was still able to bring in, it was still very close to what Carolina did. And it was very comfortable. Yeah. But I'm not patting myself on the back, but I helped design it. Again, I was one of those guys. That, just said, why can't we do this? And let's do this. And this would help our engineer and whatever. I had a good feel of how things should look, sound, and operate.
And then my final question in the Ferrell's 5, I'm going to keep it to a golf question. and I think this, and I've asked this to people who love golf and I get different answers.
Okay.
Your favorite golf major and your, I lost my, you're right. That's what happened.
No, but that's
everybody know they're motion sensitive. So if there's no movement in the room.
No. I got you. The wave your arms, Jermaine. Just start waving your arms.
Wave your hands in the air.
Favorite golf.
Yeah. Now your favorite golf major, right. And I'm even going the other end. Your least favorite golf major.
Oh wow. Well, first of all, there's.
Now, to give everybody reference, it's the Open, which I call the British Open, the Masters.
But there's no least, because there's maybe a tie for second, because you got the Masters and then the next 3 are tied for second, with the Ryder Cup being right there. So there are events, but there is nothing like the Masters, nothing. And I've been watching it. It was such a big part of, my dad and then, followed it in black and white. And I cannot tell you, going back, I'm telling you, I cannot tell you the last time I didn't see a final round live on Sunday. That's how I schedule my life. Mm-hmm. Really. Maybe missed a Thursday or up right now with it, or something. I had a meeting, didn't see, but I promise you, I think I've seen every final round since 60s.
Wow, that's something.
And been there a couple times. I saw, toured the grounds and whatever. It's a magical place. And so, Jermaine, if you know somebody who can invite me, that'd be great.
What's neat about the golf majors, and I'll be quick with this. The golf majors, if you look at the Masters.
By the way, is this an 8-part series? I hope so. I hope you cut this up.
We'll probably run the entire thing because we have time. But the thing I thought about out of all the golf majors, the Masters is the only one where it's every year it's going to be where it is. All the other majors, they move it around to different.
Right.
So that's what makes, in my opinion, the Masters unique, because it's always going to be at Augusta National. So that's just my 2 cents.
I had a friend. All right, I'm going to tell you a real quick story. So a buddy of mine gets an opportunity to go play Augusta. Mm. And that's a once in a lifetime thing. More likely you don't go twice. So he's having a good day and he's playing 13, the par 5 and the short par 5. And he hits a really good drive and there's walking down. And so he tells his caddy, he goes, wedge. And the caddy just looking at him, he goes, no, I'm playing pretty well. I'm going to lay up to Race Creek. I'm just going to lay up. And the caddy peels off the head cover of the 5-wood and gives him the 5-wood. He goes, hit it. And he goes, I'm not going for it in 2. I'm going to hit my wedge and I'm going to lay up. And the caddy says, you ain't coming back. You're never going to be here again. Hit the 5-wood. Why not? You're never going to be here again, ever. Yeah. So he hit the 5-wood, knocked it on the green, 2 putts, birdie, moved on.
Awesome stuff.
My greatest Augusta story.
That's cool. My final question for you.
All right.
We got Mac McDonald here, longtime sportscaster. He was previously.
If you find one person who sits down and watches this whole freaking interview, I'm going to send them, I don't know what. I'm going to send them something from the beach, a towel, a chair. I may send them something.
Just send it to me then.
Okay. If you find one person
Other than me.
other than you, that's exactly right.
What's your hope about the future of the business and industry? Because it's changed, obviously. Not only has it changed from the time when you first started, but it changed so much every year. What is your hope and goals, for this business? Because now with COVID-19, I mean, heck, people are broadcasting games from home.
Yeah.
I mean, we're doing Zoom interviews. A situation like this with technology, I would have to go meet you probably in Florida, which wouldn't be a bad thing. But
Right.
it's just evolving and it's changing. So what is your hope, dream, future of the business? And as far as helping the youngins too?
I project, and we project at the school, Jermaine, and what a terrific question. Really, you've had some just dynamite questions. I have never been asked who would the 5 people I want at a dinner party ever. We do the old airplane seat, but who would you want to sit on a cross-country flight
next to? An example for your class, then.
But what we tell the students is that I think it's evolving and changing every day, and I think there are so many jobs that are opening up. Every NFL team has a website, every hockey team, every soccer team, so back when, I'm 27, summer of 1980, and I'm applying for the Virginia job. I mean, you got 32 baseball jobs, you got 30 NFL jobs, 30 basketball jobs, whatever the numbers are. And to be really, all my goal was to be a voice of a major university. And so when I had that chance in 1980, and I'd already spent 5 years, to be able to get that job, I mean, I embraced it. I mean, I thought it was, one of the greatest things ever. And it definitely changed my life, and who I got to know and what happened afterwards and all of that. But I tell the message I give our students is, if you work hard, be yourself, you're going to be able to fulfill and be able to almost do anything in this business that you want to do. You want to open up a podcast. All right. Learn how to sell it, learn how to market it, make it big. Next thing you know, you're on it on Sirius XM radio. I mean, look where satellite radio has gone and how great that was. 94, when Mark Cuban, and I've never answered anything with one sentence. Mark Cuban, who started broadcast.com in 94 and made the $1 billion when he sold it to Yahoo. I thought that was the greatest thing in the world, because with the internet, I sound like I'm 100 years old, but I could go listen to broadcasters all around the country. I could listen to an Oakland A's, Angels game, if I wanted to, and I could hear their 2 sets of radio guys. And then I could listen to Oklahoma City Thunder, or I could listen to Oklahoma State, or I could listen to, and I know this will sound crazy, but I had talked to the ACC at one time, and I said, we need to figure out a way, because when we would do Clemson, Virginia football at 1, get in the car at 5, all of a sudden now we have to drive back, but the 6 or 7 o'clock game is now Florida State and whomever, Carolina. And we wanted to listen to that game. We had trouble finding the game. Now you can find it, Sirius XM radio. And I told the ACC, I said, we need to figure out a way to build a website where we could hear all these games, where we could take the Florida State feed, and so we could get in the car at least. Or how do we, we used to fantasize about satellite radio. I'll never forget that, and then how big it became. And so, bottom line, the answer to your question, which, as I said, is a terrific question. The industry is creating 1 million jobs as long as people continue to treat them correctly, and we train. Everybody steals. Everybody. I mean, now anybody on a website calls himself Joe Reporter, and he can make up quotes. He can. They can do whatever story you can do anything you want, pull whatever soundbite, do whatever story. I mean, social media has changed all our lives for sure. And I mean, I think if we make sure we regulate some of this stuff, that's what, and I'll end on this. I'll never forget when the school website message boards were launching and how vicious they were. And my daughter was, 12, 13, starting to grow up, and she'd come home from school and check the saber.com to see there was like 4 people ripping me, 2 people saying I'm great, 3 more people think I suck, 4 more people think he should be fired, 5 more people think, God, are you crazy? Mac's an institution, blah, blah, blah. And I told my daughter would come home and read it and she'd cry. Mac should be fired. He's no good on the air. I mean, literally. And then he'd sign off under Wahoo Bill or whoever. You didn't have to account for who you are or where you live, right. And that became really kind of difficult, but I stayed away from it. My daughter did not. And there was a guy in Northern Virginia who was trying to get me fired for years. And my daughter approached him at a ball game on the airplane. We're flying out to Boise. Why are you trying to fire my dad? I loved it. And he goes, oh, wait, I just don't think, and then he apologized to me the night after the ball game at the Virginia dinner or whatever. And I said, no, my daughter was just, it's no big deal. I go, you're entitled to your opinion. But I could tell that I thought that era and to this day, it's still kind of, and that's what social media is. You can go on Twitter and say anything you want about anybody and not own up for it. People don't know who GMAX 65 is. If I wanted to just totally, and I've voiced opinions a couple times. But I think that's changed, kind of how we operate. But as far as getting into the industry and growing, I think there are millions of opportunities. And I think the sky's the limit for whoever wants to be the right person, be the good person, do the job, build the circle correctly, do the research correctly, and just be Joe good guy, Joe professional. That's what we try to teach our students, how to be professional, how to dress, how to look, how to talk, how to shake hands, how to write thank you notes. And if you can do that within the business, you'll, as I said, I think you'll go a long way.
I tell you what, Mac, this has been fun. Mac McDonald.
Beyond fun. I just spoke for an hour and a half. I'm telling you, I will send a beach.
I tell this a lot of people, we could probably go 2-3 hours, but
unfortunately we could. So if you want to turn it into a book, first couple of chapters, Jermaine, I'll help you write it. Well, bottom line, it's been a wonderful career, and I'm not done. I could retire. I'm 67. Right. I'm 67 going on 37. And I feel the energy of these students. And I can't retire. What am I going to do? Stand at a local muni with white socks, black shoes, and a clipboard going, Johnson Group, 10-12. No, I don't see myself. I'm not going to be doing that. I've dug into this whole kind of media thing and what we're doing. And it's too much fun.
Well, I want to congratulate you. Like I said,
for helping you with a 90-minute whatever.
Hey, it's great. And I say this, and I sincerely mean this. With what happened with COVID and doing these sit-down interviews, getting a chance to reach out to people that I admire and respect in the business. You're one of them. Like I said, I enjoyed your calls back in the 80s with UVA, and then obviously a second go around. But you are awesome, and you still are awesome. You're not worried. You are awesome, and you do a tremendous job. And
you're nice to say that.
Time on the WFXR Sports Sitdown on WFXRTV.com. God bless you.
God, will you send me the link? I'll send it to my daughter. She won't even watch the whole thing. Are you kidding me? She's heard these stories 1,000 times. You wouldn't even think about watching it.
But it's awesome. And like I just appreciate you. And I'm a student of the game, a history nut in the business. I've been doing this for about 20 years. So, like I said, when you can talk to people in the business that have been there and the history and just everything like that, you learn a lot. And I think your stories, and even heck, I help interns too, and I pass along my knowledge. But really, like for instance, my mom is 65, so you and her around the same age. So I love listening to people's stories, because I'm a history nut. I can sit and listen to anyone's story. So I just appreciate you and congratulations and continued success. And if you ever need me to speak to your class, hey.
Jermaine, that'd be great. No, absolutely. Because as a young guy working his way up, and I would love that because they need to hear from people like you. Like, it's not easy. It's not overnight. What's the demo tape got to have? No, I would love to have you do that in February. I don't have any lecture students. It's just the rotation of who enters the school. We have monthly terms. So in February, I'll have some students. I'd love to have you for a day, for sure.
There you go. Just let me know.
That'd be fun. That'd be good.
Done.
For sure.
All right.
Back. Yeah, you haven't lived until you're playing NC State and Maryland's playing Duke, and we're at the same hotel. And Terry Holland goes to see Lefty after a run, and I follow Terry, and we open the door, and there's Lefty Driesell stark naked on the bed reading the newspaper. There's a vision that scarred me for life. Okay, so people, how well did you know Lefty? People say, how well did you know Lefty? Unfortunately, I knew him too well. That's a true story. Thank you, Jermaine. It's been great. It's really been fun.
Have a blessed day. Thanks, sir.
All right, you're welcome.